Aradkian.
How many people you know have been victims of acts of violence? Physical, sexual, or both? Even if you personally don't know anyone, I promise there are many people out there carrying such a burden. And those most susceptible to this kind of violence are in their teens. Specifically, in between the ages of 12 to 17. That means as high schoolers, we are most likely to get attacked during this point of our lives. What will happen if we don't know how to protect ourselves? Will we get kidnapped, attacked, raped, or murdered? Self-defense does not teach people how to fight recklessly or act violently, but instead how to protect themselves from those who might do them harm. If it is so advantageous, then why don't schools include it in the curriculum? Why not incorporate a basic survival skill that could potentially save the lives of hundreds, thousands even? And if not our schools, then who would ever teach us? The question isn't if violence will touch our lives, it's when. Most people have experienced some sort of risky encounter. If it hasn't happened now, it unfortunately is likely to happen in the future. Perhaps it's a stranger approaching you in the subway, or someone following you in the street. In fact, most violence happens in urban areas like the subway, inside of stores and parks. There are even incidents that happen at or near our schools. Have you ever gone through your email and noticed news about someone suspicious in the neighborhood? Have you ever read one of those email blasts and wondered if you would ever be in that situation? I have. I wonder if I'm going to be the one who's being followed home. The news is there because it happened to someone, somewhere. It's important to understand that being put in that kind of situation not only affects people physically, but also psychologically. People who go through these experiences have to deal with the after effects for years, struggling with depression, anxiety, and substance abuse. It takes a lot of strength to stay alert in a dangerous environment, and the impact it has is draining. While all of this is happening, those students still have to manage to juggle homework, extracurriculars, and chores. According to the National Sexual Violence Resource Center, 48% of students have been sexually harassed in some way, yet they still have to return to school and give their English presentation. You might think that just because this hasn't happened to you, it's not common. But the reality of it is that groping, rape, and all sorts of violence have always existed in our society. Schools are meant to empower students, to nurture their minds and help them grow as workers and as people. But how can they do that while constantly worrying about their safety? How can they focus on making it to school on time when they're too busy trying to simply survive? That's why it's so important for schools to teach self-defense. There needs to be a resource available to students that teaches them how to protect themselves. So many students can't afford to pay for self-defense classes or don't have the time. Most classes cost somewhere in between a couple $100 to just under $1,000 monthly. You shouldn't have to worry about your safety just because you don't have the money. It's not as though schools don't have the funding or space to include this unit. It can easily fit in the physical education unit. What do you think is more important? Knowing how to get out of a chokehold or how to kick a ball? Knowing how to flee a violent situation or how to hit a badminton birdie? I don't mean to say that learning sports and practicing physical activity isn't important, but when it's a matter of life or death, self-defense takes priority. And self-defense absolutely does not need to be violent. We don't need a bunch of teenagers walking around knowing how to properly punch each other. Sports like boxing and taekwondo, which focus on offense, aren't necessarily ideal to teach. Throwing a punch isn't always the best way to protect yourself. Sometimes it only leads to exhaustion. When you're being pinned down, trying to overpower your attacker through pure force might not get you out of that situation. Now, don't get me wrong. Boxing is very useful in moments when you need to land an attack and get away quickly. But in a school setting, your actions carry a lot of consequences. And let's be honest, teenagers aren't the most responsible. Sports like judo and jiu-jitsu focus on blocking techniques that are able to neutralize opponents rather than injure them. Schools should focus on teaching skills related to those sports instead for self-defense. One of the many misconceptions about self-defense is that it has to be physical, but it extends beyond physical techniques. It includes strategies like situational awareness, de-escalation using your voice and body language, keeping your distance from strangers, and so much more. Situational awareness encompasses being mindful of your surroundings. If you see someone who's acting agitated, maybe don't approach them. If you think someone is following you, go into a crowded area. If you feel as though the situation you're in is becoming violent, do not hesitate to run away. Any skill, any technique, any strategy, any method you use to secure your well-being is self-defense. Just as how we are taught the significance of consent, it's equally as important to teach the simpler aspects of safety. The safety strategies that may be obvious to you might not have even crossed another person's mind. Violence has always occurred in our society, and there's nothing we can do to change it. But we can do our best to learn how to avoid it. We can learn survival skills through our education, through schools. There's so much we can do as people concerned for our safety and that of our loved ones. You can join or create clubs helping teach self-defense. You can try to raise awareness about this epidemic of violence against teens. Maybe that's through reposting on Instagram or attending talks like this. Parents, you can advocate for these programs to be instituted in our education. You can write emails to the principal, the superintendent, the board of trustees. Go to the Ministry of Education. There are so many actions we can take. And our efforts, no matter how small they may appear, are what will ultimately bring about this change. Thank you.